Hello and welcome to Console Shock, modern and retro gaming chat with me, Trev and Stu. How's it going, Stu?
Yeah, it's going well, Trev. Going well. Looking forward to smashing out an episode.
Yeah, I'm off sort of next week, so we thought it'd be a good idea for us to get one in. We're not on a big gap between this one and the next one, which sometimes happens, doesn't it? When one or both of us are away. But we have got some. Well,
I think my last trip away, I did go out there with my headphones, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll jump on it and do one. But then I think it was always actually I'm always out and about or doing stuff, or the timing was never right, and things
you don't know what
like
internet
that.
you're going to have, and you don't know what sort of internet connection you'll have, and all that stuff. So it's a bit of a risk, isn't it, that we might not be able to record. So I mean, we have experimented before. I remember this is a while ago now. It was 5 or 6 years ago, potentially. But I remember I went to where you worked, didn't I? And we
we did, didn't we? Yes, yeah.
In your office there, good.
I felt like that. We didn't have all the right kit, so we had, I'd be speaking, and then I'll be picked up on your microphone, you'll be picked up on my microphone, and and then we were we experimented with sort of both sitting around your laptop, and I think we we both I think it was to do one in person we'd all have to have the right gear and maybe two computers to turn up with two laptops and somewhere, and
weirdly it's more difficult, isn't it, actually, when we're in the same room, because we kind of need to be both. You want mics on both of us, but you also want to make sure they're not picking up the other person, like you say. And whereas when we're doing it this way over on the internet, that isn't an issue, is it? We're obviously, it's completely separate places, so we don't have to worry about that stuff, really. Yeah,
exactly. It sort of works well. Well, we've worked out how to do it, but obviously it's possible to do a podcast when you're both in the same room. As you see, loads of people do it, and I've just. I think unless we go out and buy, those individual mics and sort of set it all up and I don't know, a mixing thing. I'm not sure really what you need, but it's certainly. Also,
where do we do it and all that stuff? I mean, it's one of the great things about. Well, we talked before how we've been able to sort of keep this going for as long as we have. And we're not winning any awards for going on for decades yet or anything. Maybe we might be able to, but I think it's the fact that we keep it fairly. We completely know that we're not. We're not super. Production value isn't through the roof. It's really basic stuff, and but we're not really, looking to try and match some bloody Joe Rogan or someone like that, or even other video games. Retro Hours is obviously a big one that's kind of a similar sort of niche of the topic as us, isn't it? The Retro Hour, and they're light years ahead of us, but that's great. There's podcasts that can be like that, and that they do their thing, and then there's ones that are like us, and we do our thing. So if we really wanted to, we could sort of spruce up what we do a little bit. So certainly the YouTube presence. I mean, you could chop it into little bits of little chunks of a topic that we touch upon. You could spread that across, like they do, people do the CU podcast, things like that.
I've often thought about that. Is sort of chopping it up, doing shorts out of it, and then potentially both of us getting a camera, so it's more, and then sort of a background with I'm on the left, you're on the right, or whatever, and then and actually sort of jazzing it all up a little bit, and. Maybe put in the comments is that what sort of people want, and then from our point of view is, well, actually, I think most people listen to us via the podcast and apps rather than online. Could we get more? And I think it might be a fun experience of actually learning how to sort of set that all up, and then would people have more of a connection with us if they can see us. And we don't hide our what we look like. If you watch the original, go back on the YouTube channel to the first videos on there, you'll see me, Trev, and Al, and a good few years ago. But we're all on there. We're not hiding what we look like. So yeah,
Exactly.
I'd being an experiment, and could be interesting to sort of try. And but then I feel like
maybe we'll get.
What would people say to us if we started? We're doing it all with videos, we're doing shorts, and then suddenly we're going, oh, and here's a word from our sponsor, Ground News. Have you ever wanted to get all your news from the left, from the right, blah blah blah? Click this link, get 95% off. Woo, Ground News. And then
I
certainly wouldn't mind a bit more money.
Of course, who wouldn't?
And that'd be fun. But I don't know how we'll sort of feel doing that. I like we just come on when we want, we just chat about a subject we want to, I think
the people that listen to us, I don't think they're screaming out for us to make tons of videos and shorts and all that stuff. I think people appreciate the sort of chatting down the pub sort of vibe, I think, that we give off. Which is probably why we do it. We're grateful to people listening now and have listened, for the longest time. And I think our appeal is, because of the way we present our podcast, and there's also kind of a value proposition, isn't there, for actually doing all that extra sort of types of content. If you're not going to get much of a return on it, I know you got to put the effort in to get it, but it's not always necessarily like a build it and they will come kind of scenario with YouTube. Maybe sort of 15 years ago, it probably was when, people would blow up from a particular video that they sent out and then they could build on that. I think that era is probably gone. I mean, we were in the tail end of it when we started, and if we went berserk at that point, we might have done better. But
I disagree with that, because sometimes I watch YouTube channels. Oh, I haven't seen this one before. Oh, it's only been going for 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever, and it's funny. You see some video channels that they put sort of so much effort into it, and I like to think they get rewarded from that. And then you see other people that are just talking in front of a camera. And what's that guy Mudahar? Do you ever heard of Mudahar?
Oh yeah,
he's like an Indian guy from Canada, and he just like turns on the camera, barely any light in the room. And it's just him talking about a subject for 15, 20 minutes. And, he's got 3.5 million subscribers. And you're thinking, well, actually, the quality is rubbish. But actually, his personality shines through, and it becomes very, a really good sort of product, really. And you think about that, and then you see other people that I almost want to tell them, it's like, oh my, I don't need all these cuts, I don't need all this drone footage, I don't need this, I don't need that, and and sometimes when you go on a holiday, like you're off in a couple of weeks, and I would say do this and type in something like 10 best things to do in the place you're going to, and then you'll see like 1,000,001 different couples trying to be travel vloggers, and they're all throwing drones up in the air and going, oh, the best thing to do is go to this beach. Oh, the best thing to do is hire bikes and go over this. And then you sort of see everyone does, copies what the previous people did, and they go to the same places, and you might get an idea of what are good things to do on wherever you're going or something, but it's sort of like a little bit. You've got to add some sort of edge to what you're doing, to sort of making it different. And maybe our edge is being a little bit shit and talking when doing the podcast when we want, and going off topics and not because I think we could. I don't know, like put in all videos of the games that we talk about in the background and stuff like that, and you could be there for 15-20 hours editing all this, and I don't know, would it add anything to it?
Well, yeah, that's basically what I think you've kind of proved my point a little bit. I was sort of saying, there's a risk and reward sort of thing. And there's people on there that have, begrillion subscribers, and they're just, a guy with no editing, just talking to a camera, no music or anything. And then there's other people that go crazy, making all kinds of, amazing, wonderous edits and footage in the background and all kinds of stuff that have hardly anything. It's just whatever way you've been able to tickle the algorithm to like you and shove you and give you a push is kind of what it does. But we've never really been that interested in chasing it. We just sort of put our stuff out there. We make it as easy as we can for us to be able to produce it. And yeah, we've gotten this far, so I think we've done pretty well, really. Haven't we? I mean, we get a decent amount of, or like you say, it's not very YouTube friendly. We're not doing it for YouTube, really, are we? It's just one of the channels that we put our stuff out. Because there are some people that just live in YouTube and they listen to all their podcasts in YouTube. Then there are other people that never touch YouTube for that stuff, and that's where we hopefully are in the other podcast catchers. I think we are, and I think that's where we get the majority of our sort of downloads and listeners. So that's kind of, and obviously people like us, not a video based medium on those other places, so we're kind of pretty well suited to that. But yeah, it's an interesting point, but I think we're doing a pretty good job and have done for a few years. We started off very we were video based for a little bit, and obviously Al, one of the charter members of Console Shock, moved away, and that kind. I don't know. I'm interested to see where we could have gone if he stayed around and didn't move. I didn't move to another country. We probably would have at least knocked out a few more of those video shows, I would think.
Exactly, because I think that was. I still think, sort of going back to them, it was finding the, your feet with them, and it was almost like a. To go back to them, it was more like a sort of a games master, not games master, but sort of like an old magazine format show that you used to get on.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah,
on TV, and you sort of do. You guys talk about this for 3 minutes, then we'll do that for 4 minutes, then we'll do a feature on this, and it was kind of like, well, actually, that's actually not a format that's familiar to me anymore, especially on YouTube.
No,
where
exactly,
you might have, we're gonna talk about this, and then there'll be something else, and then we'll do something else, and then we'll interview, Stuart, the shop owner, or something at the time, or Dan, he'll talk about something, and there'll be a general theme going across the episode. But now I think you'll get, if that video was done, if you started today, you might be. It'll all be sort of like one subject, one continuous thing for 10, 15 minutes or whatever, rather than sort of jumping around. And you and Al are kind of like sort of I want to say sort of like the wacky presenters
probably the vibe we were going for.
Yeah. And no, it's interesting sort of going back and analysing that, and you went off and you went to what was it, the Eurogamer exhibition, and sort of did features, and so I invite everyone to go and have a look at those, and you'll sort of spot me in the background of some of them, but I think they're really it's sort of interesting, really. And what would have happened if that had carried on till today? Would it have been a massive YouTube channel? Would it have been we get a good few views out of it? But I think going back to it, to make your other point, is that it was a lot of work.
Oh, absolutely,
it was a lot of work. Not the scripting, I suppose, but coming up with the ideas, and then you guys coming down to film them in the shop, and then and then the editing, and then everything sort of went around to do it all. Was a bit of a
That's right. Yeah, I mean, your shop obviously was very small in those days. It was basically us just pointing the camera at a different corner, really, to make it look a bit, to show a bit of variety in the backgrounds. And it was sort of, I would say, 70% me and Al, and then we'd sort of get you and Dan in for little segments that were in between those. And, an episode would be about 20 minutes about a specific game. And then you move to another location in Croydon, which is a ball ache to get to from where I was living at the time. And I think it was Stratford I was living in then. More so now in Woolwich, it would be. And then you move, and I think we recorded. We did record some footage when you moved in, but I don't think we ever actually cobbled it together into an episode. But I think at that point, Al had already said he was going.
I think. I don't know if I should mention this online, but Malcolm, he shared a video, and I think I shared it with you, and it was like a lost episode.
Yes, I think I remember now. Yeah, that might have been that footage. Yeah,
and it was probably about a year ago, and I think we discussed it. I mean, you chatted with Al, and I think it was like, oh no, let's leave it. It's.
I think you're right. Yeah,
and let's I don't know if it was it must have been a hidden video on YouTube.
It was on. I think the problem was it was like it was that long after you guys opened your new store, but I think we were both on like sort of sofas that he had set up in the upper floor. And we didn't have a proper mic, so it was just kind of I think it was just the mic on the whatever Malcolm was using to video us. That was picking all sort of four of us up in the middle of a discussion. So I think we were looking at old video game magazines that you had in the store.
Yes, yeah.
So the setup wasn't that great. To be honest, I think it definitely would have been a struggle to get it, to produce that on a regular basis because of the traveling, and then you guys having to stick around for a couple of hours after the shop was closed, and the editing would take many hours afterwards. So huge undertaking.
Exactly. So it was a real pain, but we enjoyed doing it. Yeah, here we are, and we thought, let's just sit. I'll sit on my in my sort of spare room, and I don't know where you're sitting on your sofa or whatever, and just sort of smash out an episode. But we are going to talk about computers and video games.
We do sometimes talk about those. Yeah, it seems the appropriate thing to talk about on this sort of show, isn't it, Stu? So let's not stop that. Let's keep that going. We do actually have, in terms of the history of this show, we did do an episode. I think it was episode 75, where we actually talked in the whole show was about how we started Console Shock. We've probably retreaded some of that stuff. Yeah, it was a while ago. We've probably retreaded a little bit of that here, which is fine.
Do you reckon someone's going, this is like episode 75 all over again? I've heard this.
Oh, you
not
can
interested.
It.
Dislike.
You can guarantee it. But if you haven't heard of that and you would like to know a bit more detail, then we're obviously not going to go into any of that stuff now. Episode 75, Al is in that episode. Obviously, he does come back. We've had him back several times since, and he'll be back again. Check it out. And we talk about how it all started, how me and Stu met, how me and Al started doing the show, and how we got to the sort of format we're in now, really. Please check it out. But in terms of what we were looking to sort of chat about today, I think kind of a topic as, I don't know, I'm going to say blown up might be a bit of an exaggeration, maybe, but Nvidia have obviously announced the latest generation of their RTX graphics cards, the 50 series. And it got, there's some discussion about how expensive they are. Me and Stu, we frequent websites like, Eurogamer or Digital Foundry. We talk about this stuff a lot. But it does make you think like how the value proposition of PC gaming is, I would say, it's sort of fluctuated over the decades since, PCs really were a thing that people would want to play games on. More so when, it was a dedicated thing where someone probably would just buy a PC just to play games, not because they want to do their Microsoft Office stuff on it, which is, what you traditionally would have a PC for. And by PC, we kind of mean it in sort of a generic term. We don't mean, a Wintel, or an AMD Win computer. We mean anything that is, something that can be used for games as well as other tasks. So, Macintosh would fall into that. Obviously, Windows PCs, Linux, Commodore Amigas, Atari STs back in the day in terms of the retro stuff, Commodore 64s, Sinclair Spectrums, all of those could do other things. I would argue that, I don't think there was huge amounts of people that were doing heavy word processing and office work on ZX Spectrums. And it's probably someone right now who's going to say, all I used my ZX Spectrum for was spreadsheets and word processing. I never played any games on it. I'm sure there were people that were like that, but it's not a system I really think of in that sense, nor the Commodore 64 actually. But I think we're in terms of what I mean by it fluctuates. There seems to be eras when a PC to game on, whether it's an Amiga or a Windows PC or whatever, they're sort of more reasonably priced, so it kind of makes sense to maybe choose. You're not making too much of a jump in terms of cost between whatever the current generation of video game console is around at that time versus you just buying a PC. And not just the sense that they're more closer in price to a console, but also what you get for that extra money. Like, do you get a ginormous leap in performance that means the games will look better than what you would get on the consoles, or not? It might be hundreds upon hundreds of pounds just to get a PC that plays things that are the same, in terms of resolution and frame rate and graphical fidelity as you get on a console. And I feel right now with the RTX series and certainly the 50 series that has just come out, I think we could probably establish that it's generally considered to be that the base PS5 is about equivalent to an RTX 3070. That's kind of what people would say is
that's kind of what someone might argue with us here, but that's the and I'm looking to sort of to say that point is I can go online now and go onto eBay and I can buy a PlayStation 5. A disc, digital only one, potentially around the £350 mark, maybe a bit cheaper, maybe get onto Facebook Marketplace. And then next to that, so that's £350. So you can do 4K gaming on that. Obviously it's going to have lots of, frame generation and bits and bobs like that. It's going to do all of that, but you can play the latest games on there. Have a completely immersive experience, and then comparing that to, I'm on eBay. There might be cheaper systems around, but for 5,497, you can get a 1590 based gaming PC, and I have to admit it does look absolutely phenomenal. It's a big glass case, lots of water cooling and fans that are all glowing, and it's got a super duper graphics card in there, and you would get potentially better performance out of this than a PlayStation 5. But does it justify spending 15 times the cost of a PlayStation 5? And I think we've had conversations on here about, actually, they're PlayStation 5s. Cool, they're too expensive. Do you remember when consoles used to be $199? And now it's like, you can really see the value proposition of a console. And in my mind, $5,500, and this is a top of the range PC. Of course it is. It just seems like, who are the people buying? Who's spending that kind of money on that kind of computer?
Yeah, I'm going by like CX, so okay, you're not going to get these things brand new, but you could, hopefully you'd get something in good condition. And if we just go, my take right now is the current era that we're in. I don't think if you're looking to get there's different flavors of PCs. You could get something for two. You could get a Dell Optiplex from an office that's out of date and they're getting rid of, and strap a good graphics card to it. So maybe you've got that office computer for free, and you've just had to go out and buy the graphics card. So technically, you might have only spent a couple $100. So yeah, in that scenario, you could say that, well, I paid way less than a PS5, and it can run all the games that a PS5 can. Maybe not this to a higher level, but to the minimum that a PS5 can. But if we're talking, you're going to go. You've got right. The choices: I want a gaming PC or a PlayStation 5. Which should I get? I mean, if you're looking at something that's going to be that RTX 3070, an RTX 3070 is still about £300 from CEX. You might be able to do sort of 280, 290, but some of them, the particular brand, depending on who produced it, it can still go up to sort of £400 for a 3070. Whereas a PS5, a base PS5, you can pick up from CEX, and if you go for a digital edition, it's £350. And again, if you did pick up that graphics card, you still needed a PC to strap it into. Again, you might get lucky and you've got some kind of hand-me-down free PC that still has decent hardware inside it, and you just strap the graphics card in. But we're going to go by the assumption that you've got to go and buy all that extra stuff as well. So what are you looking at on top? I mean, a minimum. I mean, obviously you've got to get RAM, hard drive, graphics,
exactly. The case,
it'll be another £300 at least, right? I would say probably more like 400, 500 quid to get all that stuff.
Exactly. So what do you then there might be the question of, okay, the value proposition of the now if you're Mr. Beast or something, or someone with loads of disposable income, that 5090 base PC might be, oh yeah, that's what I want the best one. But then actually, what about spending sort of £700-800 on a PC with sort of medium sort of specs, and you can get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and you're running games at 1080p, 1440p, for example. And there, I think sort of PC gaming does seem a little bit more sort of value for money. But you're absolutely right; you're still spending a lot more than a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or something. And
well, we've already established that just to match a base PS5, if you're building everything from scratch and buying the parts, you're looking at double the cost of the base PS5. Someone could justify those extra hundreds of pounds and say, well, I can edit my videos and do my office documents and edit photos. I can't do any of that on a PS5. And that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But if you are just buying, we're talking about this is from a perspective of someone that just wants to game on this PC. You could buy, if you really wanted to edit documents and videos, you could get a PS5 base and then buy some crappy like £200 PC that's just good enough for those simple creative tasks, and you've still spent less than a gaming PC. So you could, the video might take a bit longer to export. I know you could get really, niche about the different nuances that we're talking about here. But, I mean, I guess obviously you're locked down to PSN, effectively. You can't just go on Steam and buy a game and all that stuff. So you're restricted by it. But if that doesn't bother you and you just want to play whatever popular multi-plat AAA games, you're probably going to be covered most of those on the PS5, especially with the Xbox sort of slowly dying, and Nintendo obviously they have their own stuff, but people don't really consider that to be sort of a competitor to Sony, even though they definitely are in my eyes. So we're in a bit of a weird era. I don't, if you just want a game and have and also like the actual difference in performance. I don't think they're as stark as they would have been 1 or 2 generations ago. I mean, like you've mentioned it already, you can run those games that run on a PS5, and they probably are on a base PS5. Those sort of game, most of those games are targeting 4K now, and they're not necessarily getting it natively, but the upscaling, technologies now that they use, like FSR and DLSS, are pretty good now. They can produce a decent looking picture that's not too far from a native 4K image. Much better than the old checkerboard rendering that the PS4 Pro used. So if you put them side by side, and you're not putting your face right up against it, and you're not stopping to check if the puddle you ran past has perfectly ray traced reflections or even path traced reflections. I don't think someone that isn't a super hardcore gamer is going to care. Obviously, there's plenty of PC gamers that if it runs less than 240 frames a second, it's unplayable. There's obviously plenty of people that are like that. But if you're just happy for something to run at 60, upscaled to 4K, again, like 350 quid, you're probably going to be covered with a PS5. And then, perhaps you want a more higher end experience. Well, that again, you'd be tempted to say, well, that's where the gaming PC comes in, isn't it? You can get a 4090 or 4080, or now a 5080 or 5090. And that's when you Trev, push all those games up.
What I like about the PC, and now I'm saying the opposite now, is I openly talked on here about I brought a PC almost 2 years ago, so 2 years ago in May. And I've had, of course, like everyone, I've bought plenty of games off Steam. But what I want to sort of point out is, well, actually, once you get a PC, I can't back this up with numbers, but it feels like you're saving money on games. And I find that I'm an avid member and I really enjoy playing or using games via Game Pass. I think that's, a really good service, and I certainly, if I was to sort of think about it over the year, I would easily have, those games I probably would have certainly bought some of those, and things like I think the money's worth it just for Indiana Jones and Call of Duty Black Ops. I'm playing Unveiled now, and I've gone through plenty of other games on there to sort of justify the cost. But the point I'm making is there's so many sort of good deals you get on Steam and on the Epic Games Store, where they give games away obviously every week for free. Games appear on GOG, it just seems like, well, actually, I don't seem to spend a lot of money actually sort of buying games, where if you're a PS5 owner, of course they have sales, but you can only get sales from one store, the PSN PlayStation Network store. And then you can buy games on disc, so that but that's on its way out, really, and we talked about that before. So I just think it's like, well, you might have a larger outlay. So I would almost say, well, actually, I think spending $6,000 or $5,500 on a PC is absolutely crazy. But I think, spending £1,000 or £800 on a PC, I think you can get something that's pretty good value for money. You can do pretty much whatever game you want. And then you have the added advantage of, well, longer term, the games are going to be cheaper. Thirdly, you can upgrade it. So then you can go, oh, actually, I've got that. I can actually get a faster processor, or I can get a newer graphics card, or I can put more RAM into it, or I can get a better hard drive. So you can upgrade it over a period of time. And then I think the final point I was going to say is, well, actually, you touched upon it before, is that, well, I remember, I do a lot of my sort of productivity stuff actually on my Mac, but, historically, I've made websites and things on a PC, so you can do loads of different sort of creative things and learn about stuff and learn loads of skills, and or even just run your business from it, or do creative endeavors on a PC. So I'm gonna say a PC's better value.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate pretty much here, because I prefer the game on PC as well. So yeah, it's kind of funny that we're talking about it in this way, but. In defense of the PS5, you could also argue, I mean, you mentioned Game Pass, I mean, there's obviously PS Plus, on the PlayStation. So you've got a big library of old games that you can play, and the new games that are on there. So you could potentially just subscribe to that and never buy a game. So you could save yourself money there. I mean, you can't argue against Steam is obviously way cheaper in a lot of cases, certainly for AAA games, than if you don't count physical games, of course, which can get quite cheap. But the buying games on PSN network is, the sales are always quite crap, and unless the games are very old, you're never going to be looking at things that are 50p in a pound, like games are on Steam. And also, things from that sort of Xbox PS360 generation, those games are peanuts on Steam. Whereas, well, if you have a PS5, you can't play them. So even if you saw them in CEX for a couple of quid, unless they're on PS Plus, because that has some PS3 games, isn't it? But they're streamed to you. I don't think you don't play those natively. That's
it. I get genuinely excited when going through the sales on Steam and looking at the emails I get from GOG. It's, what are they doing this, and then seeing what comes out on Game Pass, and then so many games on Game Pass is Beloutro's just come out on that, and but it's quite fun. I'm sort of laughing to myself because I've bought Beloutro on Steam. And I played that on my Mac. That was brilliant. I never actually played it on my PC, but on my Mac it works brilliantly. Then I actually bought it on my phone, and it's brilliant. It works on my phone. Yeah, great. I'll play on here. Play it. I'm on a flight, on the train, wherever. It's a brilliant game, and they're games that I wouldn't really sort of touch upon. And now it's on Game Pass, so I potentially own it in 3 different ways, really. And And the same with sort of Game Passes. It goes, people say, have you tried Vampire Survivors or you got to try it. Oh, it's really good. And you see videos and you go, it's on Game Pass. I'll give it a go. Then all of a sudden you're hooked on it, and then you put in 50 odd hours into these games. And
that's another aspect of PC gaming, isn't it? There are. I mean, we're sort of focused on the high end, and again, you could also make an argument that if you really want a better quality of graphical fidelity and performance, a PS5 Pro is still compared to spending thousands on a gaming PC. There are arguments why PS5 Pro might actually be a better option still then as well. I mean, 700 quid is a lot for a games console, but it's still cheaper than you're looking at a console with, GTX 40 series, RTX 40 series performance, which is still, pretty good. Going to be getting, things that will look even better on a 4K TV. But there's that side of it. But then you've got the lower side, and I think the most exciting side of PC gaming at the moment are those gaming handhelds that we kind of constantly talk about really on this show because they're so great. Which is a completely new class of PC that's really, come to fruition in the current sort of era, the last sort of 4 or 5 years. I know there was things, sort of in the PS4, Xbox One era, where there was things like the GPD Win, which was like the first iterations of that were like a little almost Nintendo DS looking thing with a keyboard and an Xbox 360 controller built in. But they were very kind of niche, and I think you can only really get them from Kickstarter. I don't think there weren't things you could buy in a shop. And in terms of the gaming performance, they could just about run like a PS360 era game at very low performance. So nothing like what we're getting now with like the Steam Deck and like, the Rogali and the Lego. Nintendo Switch coming out just, it kind of was on its own for a few years, wasn't it, in that sort of console class gaming in a handheld. But then the Steam Deck was announced in 2021 now. That's gone quick. And it was a while later before we could actually buy them. But yeah, it's just blown up since then. But, you can buy the lowest spec Steam Deck. Sometimes they get them back in stock and they sell them refurbished for about £350. So,
exactly. And there's
an argument of that versus a PS5. I mean, performance-wise, a Steam Deck is just about touching that PS5 in terms of being able to run those sort of class of games. And some that it can't really do at all. Like, I don't know, Space Marine 2 runs like crap on like a Steam Deck, but like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and Spider-Man remastered and things like that, Dead Space remake. Some of those PS5 era games do run well. It depends on the underlying technology behind it, I guess, the game. So you can sort of, and we're still we've never really left sort of the cross-gen era. PS4 still getting games released for it. I think it probably is another couple of years, and by then there'll be another PlayStation, which is kind of weird. So I don't think it's good. It's being left behind at all. And presumably there'll be a Steam Deck 2 in a couple of years that will probably hit that PS5 performance. Well, there's a Sony handheld coming out at some point. I mean, I think a Sony handheld really has to be a PS5, doesn't it? I don't think
100%.
It's just a handheld PS4 isn't going to be that interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be an Xbox handheld coming out as well. They've talked about that. But I mean, one thing I think we talked about this, prior to the podcast starting was, I'm on eBay and I've typed in 5090 graphics card, and this is sold prices. So, and then they're selling for £4,085. One sold for
it's disgusting, isn't it? Yeah,
3,371. Where's the next one? 2,800, 2,700. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I remember years and years ago, when I was about 19 or something, I lived in Dover. After school, I got in a job in a Wetherspoon pub for a year, and it was every Friday it was brilliant. I got a little envelope full of money, and I lived at home. I felt like I was a millionaire. It was brilliant, and I remember saving up my money. I was, what should I buy? So, I went and bought a really good graphics card, and that, I don't remember them being, they were expensive, but they were £99, £150, or they were that kind of figure, weren't they? For a proper
that's
3D,
right.
and I'm some probably going to go, no, that one was never that price, it was this price. But something like, I don't know, the GeForce 3 or the GeForce 3, I can't remember whatever one I had, but those types of sort of graphics cards, and they seemed like it was quite a small part of the PC. It was, and they were just, it's almost like they were just little things, weren't they? That now you might look at that and go, oh, that graphics card doesn't look particularly good. It hasn't got 8 fans on it. It doesn't take up 3 bays in your PC. It doesn't need 700 watts of power. You just plug it in and mess around with some drivers or something that came in the box. But now it seems like it's ridiculous how big these graphics cards have become, and again, the prices of entry level new graphics cards are £400, £500, and then that's if you can get them for that price, because we just demonstrated here that if you want to buy one off eBay, they're going for over sort of £3,000 for sort of a 5090, and it's an amazing piece of kit. It does huge amounts of processing power, and lots of work's gone into making it. But blooming hell, it's expensive.
Yeah, no, we're talking about those fluctuations and when the value has gone up and gone down, and going back to probably the first sort of PC gaming that probably both of us did. Would have been those, the Commodore 64s and the Spectrums. And then for me personally, it would have been like the Commodore Amiga. I mean, the Amiga wasn't cheap, it was £400 for the bottom spec kind of Amiga 500. In terms of gaming, although that wasn't too far actually from like a Mega Drive. I mean, when the Mega Drive launched, it was about £189. So it was coming up to about £200. So about half of what an Amiga cost, but an Amiga had similar performance in terms of gaming, and it did some things better, it did other things not quite as well, but about the same. I would say it had better sound for sure. I would say not as many sound channels, but I think generally it was music wise for sure it sounded better. But obviously, then there was the whole thing of you could do animation on it, you could write documents, you could do all those arguments that we've got for the extra things you could do on a PC now. You could do it with an Amiga. But the thing with the Amiga is they kind of stood still with that kind of A500 spec for too long.
I remember the Amiga 1200, and you look through the magazines and you'll see people upgrading them, and there was all the adverts in the background. I used to love looking through those adverts, and you would see in there like the you never got the graphics. I don't think it was graphics cards, but there were processor upgrades, and you see the price of a. Oh wow! I wish I had 1200 with a 6060 card or a 6040. Oh, it would be so amazing. I'll get lots more RAM. I'll do this, and yeah, that seemed quite expensive at the time. That seemed a little bit like whoa.
Yeah, there was like I mean, if you're primarily using an Amiga for gaming, which probably the majority of people that owned one, me as well. The majority of people that owned one probably were doing with it. I don't doubt there was plenty of, like, especially in the broadcast industry, there was plenty of Amigas that were just used for work and nothing else. But I mean, it lost its way pretty quick after. When we got to, obviously, when Commodore went bust, the Amiga wasn't really moving forward in terms of its technology, and it kind of stalled at the 1200 really, which wasn't a massive leap. It was barely a leap, really, from the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive. It was a few more colors, but it wasn't anything that was anywhere near sort of a mid-90s 486 PC, or definitely not a Pentium. And then, but then it was weird because, I sold my Amiga, I still got it now, but I was still using it as a daily sort of thing, well into like the late 90s, even when I had a PS1 and an N64. But if you were coming into the scene at that point, I mean, an Amiga 1200, whatever company had bought the Amiga license at that stage, it passed around like mad. And Amiga 1200 was still like £400 in like 1998. And again, if you're not really good value for money, if all you're doing on it is gaming, I mean, you've got obviously a great library of old games that you could play on it. But at the time, the PS1 was the main console. That was about £100 in 1998. You could do stuff that the Amiga couldn't get anywhere near, really, without excessive upgrades.
Exactly.
More money.
I remember in those days. Now it felt like as soon as you got a PC. You were 3 months later, a new card came out, a new processor came out. You're a year later, 18 months later, it was out of date. You were using pretty dated sort of technology, and you would have to it was a constant sort of arms race with computers. And I think what I really like about sort of gaming now, and one of the things on YouTube I love watching is making a budget PC for $100 for $200, and you think, how are they going to do it? What are they going to do? And then it's always quite funny because they might break the rules a little bit. I've already got a case and I've got this old power supply, and then they sort of put it together, and then they sort of do the benchmarks at the end and go, actually, that's a processor from 6-7 years ago, or the graphics cards, or maybe 5-6 years ago, but they're still playing all the latest games at 1080p at medium settings, and you're thinking, wow, that's actually, it's a pretty good, value proposition. And, not everyone can, for one, make the computer, two, have all the knowledge to, and time to look on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or eBay to, get all the right components and then to get them all together. And that's really, obviously there's a certain skill involved in that. But, that's something that it sort of feels like if you had, and I touched upon earlier, I bought this computer 18 months ago, probably 20 odd months ago, and never once have I felt, oh man, this is a bit slow, or this is, oh God, I need to upgrade that. Something's, it's a bit, it's chugging a little bit here. I've absolutely I never felt that. And, you know, I've got 4070 in here, you know, an AMD Ryzen 5500, whatever, I don't know. And I think 2-3 more years, I can't see myself needing to do anything with it, really, upgrade-wise. It just works. Everything's snappy, perfect.
Yeah, I actually think that sort of sweet spot was probably in the 2010s, actually, because it was sort of at the end of the sort of PS360 era. So, I don't know what a PS3 was, probably £240, wasn't it, or something, when we got to about 2011, 2012. But you could probably pay another £240 and you could put together a really good PC that would blow a PS3 out of the water. And a lot of those sort of third-party games that maybe were just about maybe hitting 720p and 30 frames a second on a PS3, you'd be able to get that up to 1080 and 60 on like a mediocre sub £500 PC. And it would look, you would genuinely see and feel the difference if they were just watching the footage on YouTube of a comparison you would see. And that kind of continued because obviously, there was an element of the PS4 and the Xbox One weren't a gigantic leap. So if you had you could again, PS3 was PS4, was £350, and you could again put together a PC for probably about 500, certainly for 600. The games that were struggling to hit 1080p because there were plenty, sometimes they wouldn't. And often still run at 30 frames a second. I think there was more 60 frames games in that era, but a lot of them weren't. So again, you'd be able to get a £500, £600 PC. Again, I understand. You are spending more money, but not hundreds upon hundreds, thousands or something maybe to get better performance. But you would get better performance really once we've got to the PS5. All of a sudden, we've seen these PC graphics cards, obviously, and just absolutely go huge in price to the point where if you want to see the sort of difference that we got from a PlayStation 3 to a good quality PC that would run the games significantly better, and it seemed to be only like £200-300 would get you that. Now you're looking at 500, 1,000 is what you need to spend to get the equivalent, and you could maybe sort of if you wanted to, you could throw the PS5 Pro in there, and the gap maybe is lessened, I guess. But it's just the gap in pricing that you have to sort of leap to, and arguably for the gains that you're getting, because most people don't care about that Digital Foundry level of fidelity. But I think the value of these days in terms of PC gaming, we touched upon it a little bit earlier, but when you're at that low end, I mean, £350 for a Steam Deck that you can edit your video on if you go into the desktop mode and dock it with a keyboard and a mouse, edit your video, do your documents. You can probably run Photoshop if you use Proton to run the Windows applications. And that's cheaper than a PS5. And it can run some of those PS5 games. You're probably not going to want to be running them on a giant 4K screen when it's docked, but on the screen that's built in, it will look great. And that's really good value for money. When that'll get a bit that sort of value proposition might get a little bit muddied when, let's say, I think Sony obviously going to release a handheld, but we don't really know what sort of level of power it'll be. If it's a base PS5, I mean, that'll be ahead of the current. That'll be great, and that'll be ahead of the current Steam Deck. I'm not sure it'll be. I mean, it'll probably cost about it'll be between like what is now a PS5 cost and a PS5 Pro, I would think. They wouldn't really be able to charge £700 for it if it's only going to give you base PS5. Whereas, if it's sort of in between, I mean, what's a base PS5? So £400 brand new. If it was 600, 500, 600, you could say, well, I'm getting I'm paying more than a base PS5, but it's a handheld. So, that's why the miniaturization is what I'm paying for. So you could justify it then, but at that low end level, I think is where there's really good value in PC gaming. And there's obviously the other handhelds that are out there. I mean, like a ROG Ally X, which, is better performance than a Steam Deck. Certainly when you can jack up the power draw, you're pretty much getting into PS5 territory then. I mean, you're paying more. I think they're about £700. But you've got you can do everything that a PC can do. It's portable. You're not getting into the thousands of pounds realm that you probably would have to do to get an RTX whatever and a big tower case and loads of RAM and a CPU. It's all in a really nice portable package. You can take it with you. It's. I think they're the ideal. They're my favorite sort of PC at the moment, are the handheld PCs, and that's why. Basically, that's what I game on now, are those handheld PCs. That's kind of the best thing about PCs, is how versatile. It's great that, they're kind of obnoxious how expensive it is at the top end, but now they're in so many shapes and sizes, you can pick and choose where you want to land in terms of price, and the low end you're still going to get, decent enough performance to be able to game, with pretty much current gen stuff.
Well, Yeah, I was going to say, I always get quite excited about, I've touched upon it, and I still think actually, if you want a desktop, and to me that's the way to game it, is on a desktop computer. And 2 years ago I wouldn't have said that, but you can still get out there, and if you've got a son who's let's say 13, 14 years old, and then he knows his way around, as I said, Facebook, and then he wants to play Fortnite with his mates. I don't know, you could probably get a computer with a graphics card to do that for, I don't know, 200-300 quid, and then, all these.
You get a 500 quid laptop that would do that. You can get pretty decent graphics in laptops, beyond what Steam Deck can do. Yeah,
exactly. There's huge sort of great sort of savings from actually using slightly older technology, and lots of. I mean, for me, I think I'm like you, Trevor. I like sort of playing, AAA games. I like a story and experience, from beginning to end. But then lots of young people are just sitting there playing. Is it Marvel's Rivals? Is that the one, or Fortnite?
They sort of play those forever games, as they're called. Yeah, that you can play on and on and on. Yeah.
All they want to do is go on there, play Roblox, have their, talk to their friends, for 2 hours or 3 hours. All night long, and and to be honest with you, you can do that on a pretty not super powerful PC, and Minecraft as well, and get away with it. So, and have a great experience. Obviously, you can't turn out everything up to max. You can't do ray tracing. You can't do this. You can't do that. But then when you're a teenager or whatever, you've got limits on your funds. Yeah. So, you get what you're given and get on with that, really.
I mean, you could just do the same. You could do exactly the same with the Steam Deck, really. I mean, that can do Fortnite pretty well, I think, and I think it probably do Roblox as well, and you're 350 quid. It's better value than a Nintendo Switch, and the games are cheaper. To be honest, I'm sure there's plenty of people that own both, a fairly powerful desktop and then a Steam Deck to when they want to lounge around on the sofa, and you can stream from the desktop to the Steam Deck, so you're not losing any kind of performance, really. Obviously, you're going to lose a little bit in lag. You're adding some lag in terms of beaming the video over to your Steam Deck, but you can have all the settings that you have on your PC, and you can do it that way as well. So, it's a bit of a funny one, really. I think we're struggling to really, if you just want a game and you're quite happy with, PS5 level performance, a PC that you would probably have to spend several £100 on to get equivalent performance. It probably isn't worth it. There's some really good value at the lower end, especially with the gaming handhelds. But yeah, it is a bit of a weird place at the moment. I think we're certainly not in that. We haven't really kept that era, that 2010 kind of era where, you only need to spend another couple of £100 on top of a console price to get a really good, leap in performance over the PS4 or the Xbox One. We're not getting that now at all. It might also be simply just the nature of the sort of games that are coming out now. The gains are minimal, really. You could just jack up the resolution a bit, and how much do you even notice that now? Going from 480p to 1080p is enormous, but 1440p to 2160 is that the same? I don't think it is really, and even less so when you could render at that lower resolution and upscale to 4K and have most of similar appearance. And that's admittedly if you're sort of digital foundry level of pausing and zooming in on corners of the screen to see the fizzing and the popping,
counting the pixels. It's all a little bit, But that's it. I mean, the final thing, actually, maybe on the side of the consoles, is that consoles ultimately they're a lot easier to use. You turn them on, download the game you're playing in, and the times I've turned on my computer and I thought, I want to go on Call of Duty, and then an upgrade happened, and then it's taken 20 minutes or something for the shaders to compile, and I'm like, actually, I can't play it now because it's had to do an update, and then the shaders have got to compile, and then I don't understand what
Windows
shaders
wants to
compile.
update it. Windows
exactly
wants to update, and OneDrive is telling you to subscribe to it. And to be honest, a lot of that stuff is solved with Steam OS. I mean, again, you're restricted.
You
to
love Steam,
Deck.
man.
If they produce like a dedicated, like a Steam machine, so a super Steam Deck, I mean, you'd have all the great stuff about PC gaming without the headaches of Windows. I mean, even the shader compilation isn't an issue because it uses cached, compiled shaders from other people that have played through the game. So it will download them and install them. So you haven't got to go through the shader compilation because it will just take someone else's and it will use them. So, and also the game updating. Obviously, you can't really get around that, but console suffer from that as well.
I think
like Windows, the NACware, and all.
They do it all in the background, don't they? And that's
that, and I think they can also get pre-compiled shaders as well. So it doesn't have to do it from scratch, which is what the Steam OS does. Yeah,
and yes, that can be very frustrating. So that's what I kind of like about console gaming. It sort of turns on, and straight away you're playing the games, and sometimes you obviously have to do day one patches and things, but and
it might be better as well, like if Windows, Microsoft get their act together and sort of make a gaming optimized version of Windows, which behaves like the Xbox does. Then that would be a much bigger improvement. Whereas SteamOS kind of is the monopoly on that, really. In terms of PC gaming, it's just it's so much nicer experience to use than it is when you have to battle Windows. But it is what it is. That's where we are with it at the moment. But anyway, Stu, where can you find us on the internets?
Oh, we're everywhere. So you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, and any sort of podcast catcher, podcast client. You can find us on there. And for all of those, search Console Shock Podcast, and you will find us.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Stu, for that. And thank you for everybody for listening to the latest episode. Take care, everyone, and we'll catch you in the next one. See you later.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.